Yes, sir. We can hear you perfect.
Yep. I was just talking on my own. I was like, what's going on here? Just had to restart the Discord. Guess that's the trick. So yeah, blockchain, we'll do a quick update and then we'll dive into Bubblewars with you three, and we can you guys can do a presentation if you want, or just questions, and just jam on this amazing new thing you guys are building.
Indeed.
Let's wait a couple more minutes for people to enter. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. GM, Bruno. How's everyone doing on this wonderful Friday? Oh yeah, Colin, good night. Time zones, right? But awesome. I think we can get started now, and this is the Game Builder Call April 2024. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. If you might be watching the recording, so we're also recording this session, so you can rewatch it later on if you want. But if you're watching the recording, please join us in the Discord. This is where stuff is happening. Lots of interesting conversations in all the channels, and obviously, we're running these calls as well on a monthly basis generally. And it's a great opportunity to talk to the great builders, in the on-chain game space, in the Cartesi ecosystem as well, and just jam on some cool ideas. So for anyone new here, this is the usual little update on or intro to Cartesi and why on-chain games are interesting. Essentially we have these Cartesi enables you to build app-specific rollups, which gives your app, this full CPU, enabling you to do, a ton of things that you are harder to do on a shared layer, right? You're not fighting with others for block space, and you end up having, an environment that is much more predictable, also from a UX point of view, right? It also allows you to have, a lot more computational capacity, and Cartesi pairs that with a very interesting execution environment, a very interesting VM. It has this RISC-V VM that allows you to run, existing languages, existing software, existing tools, and, using RISC-V and Linux essentially, and to build amazing new things. I think, we haven't really scratched the surface in terms of like what's possible. We have these whole L3 narrative coming up nowadays. But I think these L3s are still, from a technology point of view, kind of boring, right? And I think what we're going to talk about today actually is some of the coolest stuff in the space. And this is truly kind of unlocked by Cartesi and by this unique execution environment and rollup that it enables. So let's dive into this agenda. Quite short, quite to the point. I'll do a quick set of ecosystem updates, and then we'll dive right into Bubblewars with our amazing guest speakers, Blockchain, Klein, and Zach. So on the ecosystem update side, Dazzle is running some playtests, also with some NFTs, I believe, for early players. Dazzle is built on Cartesi. It's a match 3 strategy game where the competitive mode uses Cartesi to essentially ensure fair outcomes. Very cool game. I recommend checking out their Twitter and their Discord and getting involved there if this is something that you're interested in. On the Rive side, we're still building Rives, which is an on-chain fantasy console. In short, it's a fantasy console is basically a virtual console, so a console that doesn't have a physical implementation. It's essentially an emulator without something that it's emulating that exists in the real world, essentially, or in the physical world. But it also, similarly to consoles, offers a well-defined environment that allows for rapid iteration and creativity, because constraints actually sort of enhance creativity, funnily enough. And it also allows you to build fun games. And Pico 8 and Tick 80 are some of the examples of fantasy consoles that exist in the traditional Web 2 space. And they, for example, Celeste, which is a huge game nowadays, stems from the Pico 8 initially. And it kind of goes back to the early days of building games. You're not trying to create these highly cinematic experiences, but you're actually having fun creating a game. And it's just a very very unique environment to do that in. And what Rives is trying to do is basically creating this verifiable fantasy console, using Cartesi, as the backbone, and that allows you to, essentially prove all the scores of the games, prove the gameplays, verify them, and it creates this very interesting dynamic where now every gameplay can be enshrined into crypto history, right? You could think of a gameplay kind of like a piece of art almost that is sort of unique and that belongs to you. And on top of that, obviously, Web3 Rails means that you can monetize things in a completely new way where the game that you develop, using traditional languages, thanks to Cartesi and, the RISC-V EM, you can also just monetize it from the get-go. Sell it as an NFT, as a cartridge, through tokens on a bonding curve, whatever kind of suits your fancy. And so more on this very soon. If you're not on the Discord yet, please join us. We will share a lot more, in the coming weeks. A lot of cool stuff coming up, both from a developer perspective. We're working on docs to make it super easy for you to start building some games on Rives, but also from a user perspective, some interesting updates coming up very soon. So please make sure to join the Discord if you haven't yet, and follow us on Twitter. And now let's get to the real stuff here with Bubblewars. Blockchain, Klein, Zach, do you guys have a presentation that you want to share to begin with, or should we dive right into just a conversation?
Oh, yes. So we're just going to give a brief sort of description of Bubblewars, and then we'll just start talking about it.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Okay, so hello guys. I am Jesse, and then I'm here with Klein and Zach, and we're building Bubblewars. And Bubblewars is basically a fully on-chain MMO where ETH is mass and basically momentum is conserved, which means that it's a fully physics-based sandbox, essentially, where people sort of try to steal ETH from each other. Right? So it's a layer 3 that sits on top of a layer 2. We're going for Blast right now. And we are running a fully on-chain physics engine, right? So every single input within the game is a signed transaction, and all of these transactions are processed by the physics engine running within the Cartesi machine. So how does the gameplay work? You essentially sign in with Twitter, right? And then you spawn a portal, right? And your portal is basically your sort of entry point into the world, right? It's essentially an extension of your wallet, right? So any funds that you send to the rollup will appear within your portal, right? Additionally, any funds that you want to withdraw from the rollup will be withdrawn from your portal, right? So it's essentially the wallet, but within the rollup, right? And once you spawn your portal and you send funds to it, you can start emitting bubbles from your portal, right? So bubbles are essentially your main way to that's essentially the main thing you do is emit bubbles and move them around the map, right? So once you start emitting bubbles, so essentially, your bubbles are it's the main sort of gameplay object within the game, and the goal of the game is to absorb other bubbles from your opponents, right? But you can't do that without emitting bubbles, right? So, that's essentially the gameplay. And then we have this sort of other mechanic called resources, right? That client can go into.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we can definitely dive deeper into all that. Maybe Klein, go ahead first, and then.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? Is there any echo or it's fine?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So, Gloshin gave a great overview. It's kind of like an Agar.io type game, right? If any of you guys have played Agar.io, the game where there's like a bunch of bubbles, you shoot out bubbles to move. But this is a little bit more complex than Agar.io because there's also different types of resources. It's not just swallowing other people's bubbles. So the game world itself is filled with resources that can be collected, and they can be represented either by tokens or NFTs. And usually there are different type of power-ups that you can absorb. So it's not just like you're swallowing other people's bubbles like in Agar.io. So far that we're planning on implementing, there's 3 types of power-ups. There's the shield power-up, the puncture power-up, and speed power-up. So one of the things with Agar.io is that if you think about it, if you have a big enough bubble, you can just swallow everyone, right? You might move slower and there's like some issues with that, but since we're a game where you can just spawn in with a huge bubble, we wanted to level the playing field with these different type of resources. Because if you just spawn in with a lot of like a huge bubble, it's kind of unfair for people who don't have enough. Currently, we're using ETH to spawn in, right? Like testnet ETH. So if you don't have enough, then you won't be able to really play too much. So that's why we're having these different type of resources like shield, puncture, and speed. So one example of that is this shield power up. If you have the shield power up and someone shoots a bubble at you, you won't necessarily be eaten. There's also the puncture power up. So even if there's a big bubble and you're a much smaller bubble, if you shoot the puncture power up at the bigger bubble, it'll break apart regardless of how big it is, as long as it doesn't have a shield. There's also this aspect of nodes throughout the map. So how do you actually gather these power-ups or resources? So nodes are like static objects that are dispersed throughout the game that emit these resources. But what makes it special is like it's not just emitting these resources like shields or power-ups at any rate, but only when you like interact with the nodes. So you have to deposit like an ETH in so since your bubble is made up of ETH, that's your mass. You have to actually shoot in some of your mass or ETH into the bubble, and you will be returned with a certain amount of power up based on the amount of ETH that you put into the node itself. That's it on resources from me.
Yeah, so these nodes are essentially AMMs, right? So people will come in and deposit liquidity of a certain token paired with ETH, right? And then people will go to those nodes and emit ETH into them, right, to receive that token, right? So they're essentially exchanges that exist, like many exchanges that exist throughout the world within Bubblewars, right? So so essentially Dogecoin, different NFTs, dog with hat, any token can exist within Bubblewars, right?
Yeah, I love it, guys. I mean, I think this is I've heard of the whole pitch before, so I can imagine that for other people in the audience, maybe this is a lot, and I'm sure they have a lot of questions. But maybe we can kind of drill down a bit into these different areas, right? So it starts with Agario, and then you're adding essentially these new power-ups on top, right? But maybe can we start first by explaining, a bit more about, because I think no one has really put a physics engine on chain. How is this possible? Like, what kind of physics engine are we talking about? What does this look like?
Yeah, it's Cartesi, right? So it's possible because of Cartesi. Yeah. It's actually a JavaScript physics engine called Plain.js that we're using. But I mean, we can port over to any language if we decide we want to scale and support way more bodies within the world, right? But currently, JavaScript is good enough.
What do you mean with scale to more bodies?
I currently don't know the limitations of the current physics engine that we're using, right? But if we want to scale to something way bigger, we might want to port to some C++ or C physics engine. Right?
Okay. That makes sense.
But for now, Plain.js is pretty good.
Nice. Yeah. And so I think, blockchain, we've had this conversation in the past, but what is the benefit of having a physics engine on chain? Like, basically it brings a bunch of additional sort of complexity, right? But do you think games need complexity? Sorry, I'm getting quite philosophical right away, but
well, I chose a physics engine because we have infinite. It gives us infinite space for design, essentially, right? So we can create many different features to the game, but outside of just we can add gravity, which is something we're thinking about adding, right? We're thinking about giving portals gravity and nodes gravity, right? So someone can just deposit ETH into their portal and really just be a passive player. They just deposit as much ETH into their portal to increase their gravity, and then they just sort of gain a yield by just absorbing stray bubbles that get sucked into their portal.
Interesting. So right now, what are the physics that are being used in the first version?
Right now, it's just movement physics, right? So mission, and then there's also, it's just a mission and movement. There's no gravity right now. I just disabled that.
Yeah, the basic things are if you think about how a rocket ship moves, it shoots out mass in one direction to move through space, right? That's the basic principle of Bubblewars. If you want to move your bubble right, then you got to shoot out a bubble smaller out of it left. So that's the emission physics in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm blown away by this again. Yeah, as Bruno says, the design space, the physics engine opens is jaw-dropping, right? I guess you could just have an infinite amount of things happening that maybe we predict to a certain extent, but some that, the behavior, I guess, is almost like simulating reality, where we get to a stage where it's just way more complex, the kind of behavior that can happen there. So maybe we can dive into a bit more the sorry, am I still audible? Oh yeah. Into the power-ups themselves. So how did you guys select these specific power-ups? Klein, I understand you said you want to add a bit of these features to avoid the Agario problem, where there's one big bubble that just can, since anyone can port in. How do you think about the balancing of the game?
So the first thing that we thought about is, if you're making a game where mass is ETH, you don't want just a pure pay to win game, right? Because someone can just come in with, at least with Agario, everyone spawns in with the same size bubble. But with this, your portal is like you can load in as much ETH as you want, and then you can shoot out bubbles from your portal with the amount that you load in. So that's an immediate problem that comes through right away. Like, oh wait, can I just spawn huge bubbles right away and beat other players who maybe don't have as much ETH or don't want to risk that much ETH playing? So immediately that problem came into I guess my blockchain's head and our head, and it was like, okay, that was the first power up we thought of, like energy points. Like if you shoot these puncture power ups at someone, you can break apart a smaller bubble. Like even if you're tiny, like you have 0.1 ETH as a bubble, but you shoot the puncture power up at like a 10 ETH bubble, you can immediately take it down or have it emit smaller bubbles and absorb those too. So yeah, that was the first power up that we thought of.
Interesting. Yeah. And so you have to go to a node that's somewhere in the game, and to get that power up, you would have to trade in some ETH. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And then you would swallow the power up as a resource, kind of, and then someone else could swallow it as well. Or how would that what would that look like?
Yes. So as soon as you shoot the ETH into the node, right, the node then shoots back the equivalent amount, right? Whatever the exchange rate is, it shoots back that resource at you, right? But someone can come in and intercept, right? So there also is a huge risk to sort of. So before you even decide to shoot in ETH, right, into a node, you have to sort of like secure that area, right, or find a safer area. Right? And each node can have sort of a different price for the asset that it's selling, right? So there could be arbitrage that exists between these nodes as well. Right?
Yeah, interesting. So you could, how many nodes would you have per resource? Like, could be an infinite amount, or?
Yeah, it could be an infinite amount, or whatever our limit is, like whatever amount of bodies we can handle within sort of the machine, the Cartesi machine, or our app is what we're going to set the limit to. But really, they're going to be an infinite amount of worlds, right? The goal is to spawn this rollup on as many of these rollups as possible, right? Yeah. And you as a user would just be able to toggle between these worlds, like as simple as just switching a tab, right?
I see. Yeah, I mean, I kind of see this as a different. Essentially, you're mimicking a bit. DeFi is already kind of a game, sort of PvP to a certain extent. People trading coins and taking each other's coins in a way. This is just making it more fun and putting all these people into this world where physics rule and a lot of new behaviors can appear. So I'm a massive fan. Don't know how much ETH I'll put in there, but it's it's great. So wait, one question here, I think, relating to your last answer is, how big is this world? Like, is there like a hard limit? Like you like hit a wall or something, or what does that? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah. There's there are physical bounds to this world, so there is a border, right? So you can hit the border, but the goal is to make it as big as possible.
Uh-huh.
Because essentially this is running on like one computer, essentially. So
yeah, and if any of you guys join the playtest, I think in a week or so, you zoom out a lot on the map, you'll be able to see the borders of the canvas. So there is a limit on, like, there are borders of the world right now.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so
we're also thinking of turning that border into like sort of an extra revenue stream where, like, if your bubble does touch the border, like a portion of your ETH will get absorbed maybe. But yeah, that's just one thought.
Nice. Yeah. Your ETH just gets swallowed by a black hole or something.
Or maybe not. We don't have to do that.
Or just bounces off, maybe. I don't know. But
it'll bounce off.
It'll bounce off. Okay. And so we've had in the past like a bunch of other guest speakers on, and some of them are building kind of this almost like forever game, and are more interested in building these like session based games, right? How are you thinking about Bubblewars? I'm assuming it fits more into the first, but why? And how are you seeing that?
Like I'd actually say it's a mix of both, right? But it's persistent, right? So you actually opt into the world whenever you feel like, and then when you're done playing, let's say you play for an hour or so, you move all your bubbles back into your portal, which that's sort of like the safe zone.
Yeah.
And then maybe the next day you come back, right? So it's a persistent session-based game essentially, right?
I'm not sure if we mentioned this, but the portals can never be like destroyed. So once you spawn in, your portal stays put, and then anything that touches your portal will be absorbed by your portal. So yeah, like you can play, and then when you can play, you can lose, you can gain, and then when you gather your resources and your bubbles back to your portal, it's basically untouchable. So but yeah, in that sense, it is persistent. Like your portals stay in place, and yeah, you can deposit and withdraw from your portal when you don't want to cash out.
Interesting. That makes sense. Is there like a hard limit to how many people can play at the same time, or?
How many people can play at the same time? There's a hard limit to the amount of. So yeah, I guess in that sense there is, right?
Yeah.
But there's a hard limit to the amount of portals that can exist within the world, right? Because
yeah, you need some space to play. Yes.
But there's no limit to the amount of ETH, and eventually we're thinking of like, because these portals are like extensions of someone's wallet within the rollup, we're thinking of sort of fractionalizing the ownership of these portals, right? So because there is a hard cap on portals, right, they're going to be very scarce and valuable, right? So people are going to want to sell sort of ownership of their portals to people, so that other people can just play through their portals without necessarily owning the entire account, right?
Definitely. And I think relating to this as well a little bit, Carlos asking if there's, if the bodies, or I guess the portals, are essentially to, lose some of their mass over time, right? How do you because say if I have a portal as well, like how am I gonna, shouldn't I be incentivized to sort of play versus just holding my portal, or is that not really an issue?
We're for sure working on like what sort of physics and what sort of economics would work the best within the world, right?
Yeah.
But in my head, I feel like people should be incentivized to deposit ETH into the rollup, into the portal. And obviously, the more ETH you deposit, right, the more gravity your portal is going to have, right, and the more ETH it's going to suck up, right. But then there's also an incentive to emit bubbles, right? It's like gravity is not going to absorb everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really use gravity to to extract a resource from a node, right? You have to emit bubbles, right? So there are going to be many different ways to play the game, right? Some people are going to be passive. I think most people are going to be passive players. Like most people are just going to deposit ETH into their portal or deposit liquidity into a node. Other people are going to just do arbitrage. They're going to write bots to do arbitrage between different nodes. And other people are actually going to be playing the game the way sort of intended, right? So, I mean, as long as you're having fun, right, and generating value for the entire app, I have no complaints.
No, that makes sense. So what I also understand is that you've kind of figured out, or are trying to figure out kind of the base primitive, the base physics that enable emergent behavior and enable sort of things to appear in a sort of in a good way, right? Where the game is sort of balanced as well. So how are you thinking about that? And I suppose it's kind of a process, but what is the thought process like, the steps you're taking there?
Yeah. So this is why we're going the play test and iterate route, right? Because we don't know what the emergent behavior is going to be. So we want to release something so we're going to do these play tests twice a month, right? And the goal of these play tests is to generate feedback and then iterate. And then the game is going to look very different between each play test. And as soon as we figure out what like the game loop is, right, then we release, right? We have no clue what the emergent behavior is going to be. So there's going to be many different versions of this that exist on testnet, and many different versions of this that exist on mainnet. So yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to add is like we're not even sure because we're playing with like me, Glock, some other members of Cartesi have played, and some people at Hackdown have played. And it's only like a few people on the map at a time, right? So we're not even sure how the game will be played. We might discover things like Carlo was saying, when you actually like emit your bubbles and shoot around the map, you're actually losing your ETH, right? And sometimes that might not be recovered, and that might cause people to like not want to shoot as much, right? We're not exactly sure what would happen when a lot of people play, or what kind of behaviors we'll see like often. And that's why we want to like iterate and play test, like maybe change around the physics, change around the denominations of ETH that affect your size of the bubble. So I think we'll discover more about how people play the game and just in general what we can change even about the physics when we get a lot of people playing on the map.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
What's the you guys expect there to be like one sort of ultimate, end state, like where, we figured out like the physics and this is the way to do it? Or is it going to be like maybe you have a ton of different, versions with different physics that sort of coexist that maybe target different players?
Yeah, I think it's going to be many different things that target many different people. And yeah, to me, I feel like there's going to be many different rollups, right? In my opinion.
I also like to think of this as kind of like a gambling game. It kind of is, right? But with more skill. If you think about like poker, there's like high stakes where the minimum to enter might be like a certain amount, like 10K or something, right? If we're thinking about that in the context of Bubblewars, there might be worlds where the minimum portal amount is 10 ETH, for example, or the minimum portal amount is 1 ETH, and that might make things more fair for like players who don't want to play with too much, or for players who do want to play with a lot and risk a lot.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a lot to think about. I'm hyped. So audience, please ask questions as well. But in the meantime, so blockchain, you talked about Dogecoin, right? And these kind of, from what I understand, you're also thinking of, people can come in with these, tokens or NFTs, and you want to basically cater to, or allow all of these kind of existing assets to also work within Bubblewars. How would that work, and what would their function be?
Yeah. So in my head, I want like a fully permissionless sort of like decentralized like token submission system, right? But for now, it's going to be like a whitelisted, hard-coded thing where we decide first what tokens can be listed within Bubblewars and what their function would be, right? So, for example, if we can partner with like some meme coins, right? And then get them to launch a portion of their supply in Bubblewars, right? And we could hard code a different sort of power up. We can define a power up for that meme coin. Like, for example, maybe Dogecoin could give you gravity, right? So like if you absorb 2 Dogecoin, like 2% of your mass now has sort of like a gravitational pull, right? Yeah, so we can define that. But eventually we want it to be like a system where it's permissionless, and like the rules of the power up is almost defined in like not an automatic manner, but like what is it? Like we want everything to be composable eventually, right? But for now we have to sort of, it's hard to design like fully composable things. So for now we're gonna just start with like a whitelisted system that we're in control of, and then eventually we'll make it permissionless.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. So on topic of like nodes, right, which you said are basically like AMMs or like LP pools, what's the intent? Is that like to create essentially like real markets per resource, and then to, you know, resources that are high in demand are essentially more expensive? Like, what does that mean for like the world, right? Like, if a resource is more expensive than others, I guess it will just self-regulate. So like resources that have more demand because they're maybe more interesting will be more expensive, I suppose. Is that the intent?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like in addition to like the value of like the innate value of the power up, like innately like a puncture power up is gonna like be very valuable to people because it allows you to attack your enemies. A shield power up is gonna be very important to people, right? But then maybe there could be like speculation on top of all that, where it's like some people they don't even care to even use the power up. They just want to absorb it, take it to their portal, and then hold it, right? Or even bridge it back, because all of these are ERC20s, right? That can be bridged out of the rollup, right, and traded, right, on Uniswap or really, right. So every single token within the game can exist anywhere, right? But yeah. Some people won't even use. Some people just speculate, right? So the game can be a speculation game, or it can be like an actual. And I'm hoping that it becomes an actual game, but I really feel like a certain percentage of people are just gonna buy these power ups and just hold them. It's okay, as long as they're having fun.
Yeah. Or you can always have some form of rebalance things to incentivize people to actually use them somehow. But I do like the approach of having these sort of pools, because then you're essentially letting sort of, if the market is somewhat efficient, like resources that are like, you know, more powerful than others should be worth more, which is quite cool. You know, and if you compare that to like traditional games, maybe where the market is sort of the game creator is like market making, or is like the market, you know, that's not really something you could do unless you kind of open it up to the free market, I suppose.
Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. Do we have any questions? Otherwise,
Oh yeah, I see some. Interesting to have world-specific rule. Yeah, we can have many different roll-ups with different rules, and then the simulation. Yeah. We're basically updating the physics state between the timestamps, right? So yeah, if we receive an input on timestamp 1, and then we receive an input on maybe timestamp 10, we calculate the physics between 1 and 10, right? And then yeah. And then how do we sync all that? We have like a state server, right, that is actually listening to the inputs that are happening on chain on the base layer, and then it's simulating the same sort of source code that's running within the rollup, right? And then it's basically a WebSocket server that syncs all the clients with the state of the rollup, right? So it's usually going to be far ahead of the actual rollup, but all the code is deterministic, so it's essentially the same state.
And Yeah, there might be NFTs with skins. It's relatively simple to implement because you're connecting with your wallet. You're depositing ETH into your portals. You can also deposit and you can buy an NFT, deposit it into your game wallet, and then if we detect that NFT, we can like render your bubbles differently based on that. So that's actually something we've been thinking about implementing, but haven't yet. But yeah.
Sweet. Zach, I'm curious, what are you most excited about with Bubblewars?
So I think for me, what I was most excited for was just kind of seeing the team build in ETH Denver, and then seeing blockchain load up Bubblewars on 4 different computers and have people play all at once. It was crazy.
Sheesh. Is there any way we could get a little demo for the people in here, or do we have to wait for next week?
I imagine we could probably pull together.
Let's wait for next week.
Oh, okay.
Wait for next week? I trying to keep it secret,
let's-
huh? What are you? The secret?
Damn.
Let's keep the hype up.
No, it'll be really cool. There's a like an updated UI. It looks a lot cleaner, so it'll be good for next week.
All right. Well, when is the playtest starting, by the way?
So the playtest starts on the 12th. And we're having 2 different days. We're having one day on the 12th, and then we're having one day on the 26th. They're both on Fridays, 2 weeks apart. We're going to be playing for roughly an hour, but we might just play all day. It depends on how fun it is and how busy we are.
Nice. No, I love it. So you guys heard it. Make sure to join the Discord and we'll play. But I think we're not over with questions. I think there's tons of things to still dig into here. I wanna talk a bit more about the social aspects of Bubblewars, right? So like how are you guys thinking about sort of tying in, say, existing social graphs, social networks, let's say Web3 social into all of this?
Yeah, you want to take this or?
I guess you can talk about the sign-in portion, and then I'll talk about the social feed.
Yeah, so the main thing right now is that we're using Privy. Privy is a tool that lets you log in with different socials, whether that be Discord or Twitter or Farcaster. And once a user logs in with one of those, we can then grab their information, like their username, and then instead of displaying on their bubbles their address, it'll display their username from whichever they choose to log in. I think currently we're thinking of doing Twitter, Farcaster, maybe Discord. Yeah. And also, this is something we're thinking about doing. Like we'll grab your profile picture. This is not available through Privy, but we are thinking about doing it still. Once we have your username for your social, we'll grab your profile picture from that social, like for example Twitter, and then that will be your bubble color. Instead of it being like a green bubble or whatever, it'll be your profile picture on the bubble. That could be pretty funny. But yeah, that's something we're thinking about doing.
That'd be sick. I would love that. Seeing my bubble just fucking crushing everyone, like absorbing all your faces.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
So yes, sign in with Twitter, Farcaster, right? And additionally, we'll have some sort of social feed that actually shares the state of the world on some sort of social media. I mean, it's. I mean, really, you can only do this on Farcaster because Twitter is really expensive, right? So for the most part, yeah, we'll share the feed of the world, right, and then we'll like share a frame of the world, right, through Farcaster, right. So any sort of like events that happen within a game, we'll create a caption for it automatically and then emit a frame of that event, right. And when people click on that frame, they'll be taken to that place, that certain coordinate within the world, right?
I love that. It's like kind of like a visual version of like Etherscan where you see like all the bubbles getting swallowed in real time, and how funds are moving between bubbles and accounts. That's insane.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. So maybe we can talk a bit about the blast layer you guys are probably going to deploy on. So what are like what is the thinking there, and like what are kind of like the features that Blast has that you're interested in?
So first one that caught my attention was sequencer revenue that goes to the contracts, right? And yeah, that was the first thing that caught my attention. And then I got privy to the native yield, right? And that sort of changes the way you monetize your game. Because at first we were gonna, take so much fees from the user, right? Within the game, like sort of how Friendtech takes fees whenever you trade one of the keys, right? So now we can take less fees, right? But the only thing we're taking from the user right now is opportunity cost, right? So instead of giving them the native yield that Blast offers to any EOA or a smart contract, we take that for ourselves, and instead we reward them with points, right, within the game, right?
Interesting. Yeah, so you're basically TVL is sort of driving. TVL locked in Bubblewars is the driver of potential fees or revenue. But so the sequencer fees, you would return them to the user for UX, or?
No, we'll ourselves, and then we'll distribute a portion of the revenue, maybe like 50 or 60% back into the game, right? By actually probably emitting ETH back into the game, right?
So you have like bubbles.
Maybe every month we'll emit. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, no, that's sick. Let's see if we have some new questions. You could attach an algorithm AI to identify cool interactions to post on socials. Indeed.
Yeah, we can have like a LLM like commentator, right? That like views the state of the world and like does commentary, like sort of like biased commentary, right? We can intentionally program it to be biased, right?
So what would be like the one-liner for Bubblewars?
Sadly, the one-liner is it includes like it mentions another game. I would say like it's an on-chain agar.io, but
I guess it's
Yeah,
easy.
Yeah, that's how I sell it to everyone. It's like this is on-chain Agari.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it is kind of a better way to lose your ETH or to win some new ETH. Like, stop playing around with DeFi. Come play Bubblewars. This is where shit goes down. But yeah, a lot to brainstorm about.
yeah. But we don't really want like DeFi native people to play this game because those people are more passive, right? We want like more active people to play it. So
Like
yeah,
traders?
maybe more like trader type people, yeah. But I guess DeFi and trader people are the same. I don't know.
If you think about it, it'd be a cool way to diversify your portfolio, just swallowing up all of the meme coins.
Is this financial advice, Zach?
No, never.
It is.
Thank God. Okay, no, I love that. I had a question, but I forgot now. But yeah, what's so what do you, how you guys, this is a usual question I ask every time in these calls, but bots are a big topic in once you add financialization. Agario is already botted like crazy, right? But like now we're adding financial incentives on top of that. How are you guys thinking about bots? Like, is that something you guys would embrace, or is that something you want to mitigate?
Oh, I really can't wait till bots. Like the goal is like once we get to mainnet and we have a lot of users, the goal is to create like a botting SDK for this. Because that allows people to be passive sort of players. Like it allows you to play like this game, which is an active game. Like you can't be passive, right? You have to be active to win. But it allows more like passive oriented people to just throw money into it and then have like an AI sort of do their bidding within the game. And I really think majority of the people that play Bubblewars are going to be passive. Like most crypto native people are passive, right? They're not used to like being able to play something like that's fully on chain, like in an active manner.
Yeah. I think there was this like in the previous call, I think it was with Guilty Gyoza. We went over like the personas of of gamers that exist sort of and I think there was let me see if I find this again, but it was about we have the killers, and that's like 1% of all players. Achievers 10%, explorers 10%, socializers 80%. And if you look at Web3, you're essentially a lot of degens or are probably falling under the killer archetype. Is that something you think you're thinking you're building kind of for the killers, and then maybe sort of socializers or explorers are more like kind of in the background, like observing what's happening? It kind of becomes like a competitive sport for maybe bots or like highly skilled traders, and then your economy is basically comprised of a lot of like meta games, right? People watching what's going on in Bubblewars, or how are you thinking about it?
I want to build it for the people that generate the most value, and I feel like the people that generate the most value are passive, right?
So what do you define by value?
Just TVL, right?
I love that definition of value.
That's pretty fun.
Do you agree?
Yeah. TVL revenue.
Yeah. Okay. Value is like what like the platform like earns, I guess, right? But I guess you could. Yeah.
But maybe I'm not. I haven't thought about it enough, right? So we'll see, right?
Yeah. No. 100%. I mean, it makes sense, like to cater to that. But yeah. So thinking about the botting, right? Like who, if it becomes a bot, and I know it will take a bit of time before we get there, but if you're building a game, essentially a game for bots or for people building bots, in a way, right? You're shifting the game from indeed being like more active to people building,
and just sit it out and wait until it wins battles and generates money for you, right?
Yeah. So what would be
or
like
encourage other people to invest in the same portal that you invested in?
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. So what would be like how would you define sort of success in like say like in like 6 months or so, or a year, I don't know, when this is like live, and when would you be, what do you think this will look like if it succeeds?
What will it look like? 1 trillion TVL.
1 trillion TVL.
Personally, I think it'll be like, if I see this when we launch, and it's similar to Agario in the sense there's a lot of people playing at any given time, and there's a lot of ETH being lost and and gained, I think that would be, in my eyes, that's pretty successful because it's a game that's actually being played and people are enjoying it. So that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, and additionally, just content that's being generated, right? Because to me, I also think of this as like a content generation machine, right? Where it's like it's on-chain content. You can roll back and view the history of this game. Like one of my favorite internet experience is called it's this Reddit thing called Place. It's this Reddit subreddit called Place, and I just love like looking at the history of like I don't know, some people in here have already heard it, but yeah, it's r/space. It's very cool. Yeah.
What do you like about it?
It's this app where people just they spawn colors onto a canvas, right? But each user only gets like one spawn per minute. So what people did was they sort of gathered together to create like giant paintings, right, of different companies and different influencers, right? So it almost became a war, like sort of like an internet war between different ideas, right? Yeah, that's really what I see Bubblewars becoming. It's like a social sort of on-chain clashing of ideas where like different maybe political ideas or different fan bases can come on chain and battle it out. Like maybe you can have like Trump supporters versus Biden supporters on chain, right? Or you can have Taylor Swift fans versus Beyonce fans, like just clashing out, right? And whoever wins becomes like, it's like on chain, so there's no debate. So yeah, I view this as a content generation machine as well, in addition to a degen sort of a gamble-fi experience.
Fuck yeah. So yeah, you would essentially, and I guess since you support all of, say, DeFi and assets and stuff like that, I guess one behavior might be that, at least eventually, if it becomes sort of permissionless, once you figured out the physics and stuff, like people are just gonna like fucking like literally airdrop or bubble drop or whatever you would call it, like stuff into the world. Like it becomes kind of this like almost like ad space, right? But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it becomes ad space as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm fucking blown away by this. I've already talked to you about. We've had a lot of chats on this, but I'm stoked. I'm literally stoked.
Would you say your bubble is about to burst?
It's bursting right now.
But yeah,
Mine
guys,
is as well.
The playtest is next week, so join the Discord. Please, if you're excited about Bubblewars, please join the Discord and participate in the playtest. It'll be fun if we can have a lot of people. And we're also thinking about maybe giving all playtesters just like a playtest NFT that we might use later. So please join if you're interested in Bubblewars. The Discord link is in the chat.
Awesome. Did we cover all nooks and crannies, all bubble? I don't know. Did we cover all of it, or did I miss some stuff, Zach, or buying blockchain that you want to talk about?
I think for the most part we covered all of it. I think blockchain and Klein are just kind of answering questions in the chat right now. But you asked everyone what it would mean for Bubblewars to be successful in their opinion, and I think for me it's the idea of swallowing Vitalik Buterin's bubble. Or
that sounds so nice, dude. I love that.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. Or swallowing Eric Demora's bubble, or even swallowing your bubble, swallowing everybody's bubble. It's gonna be very fun. Yeah, I think everything's covered.
Awesome. If you have any last questions, please raise hands or drop them in the chat. But yeah, very, very stoked. Always swallow, yeah. Oh my god. This is turning dirty.
Very mutable.
Oh my god. All right. Let's go then. Yeah, I mean, let's make sure everyone to join next week. And yeah, let's talk soon. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks for your time, guys. Klein, Glockshin, Zach. Thanks for the audience, as always. And peace and love. Peace and love.
Thank you guys. See you next week at the.
All right. See you guys next week. All right, bye.